What if the place meant to protect your child became the place you feared the most? What you're about to hear sounds unreal, but for one family, it became a living nightmare. It all began in a quiet northern town where snow-covered streets and small schools gave parents a sense of safety. In this town lived a mother named Laura Bennett, a hard-working woman raising her 8-year-old son, Ethan, who was born with autism and could not speak. Ethan had bright eyes, loved puzzles, and communicated through sounds, gestures, and emotions. Laura trusted that the school understood her son's needs. She believed they would protect him when she couldn't be there. She was wrong. Laura's days followed a routine. Every morning, she packed Ethan's lunch carefully, cutting his food just the way he liked it, placing a small note in his bag even though he couldn't read. It was her way of staying close to him. When she dropped him off at Maple Creek Elementary, she waved until he disappeared through the doors. She never imagined what might be happening behind those walls. One cold afternoon, while scrolling through social media, Laura stopped suddenly. Her heart began to race. A local parent had posted photos of a strange wooden structure inside a classroom. It looked like a box, a small enclosed wooden box with a door. The caption read, "Does anyone know why this is in our kid's school?" Laura felt her stomach tighten. She stared at the image again and again. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. At first, she tried to brush it off. Schools had storage units, reading corners, therapy tools. But deep down, a mother's instinct was screaming. She sent messages. She made calls. By that evening, a parent she barely knew replied with words that shattered her sense of peace. "That box is used for timeout," the message said. "And I heard it's for a nonverbal student." Laura dropped her phone. Her son couldn't talk. He couldn't explain his day. He couldn't tell her if something bad happened. Fear flooded her chest as memories replayed. Ethan coming home unusually quiet, refusing to eat, sometimes screaming at night. She had thought it was just a phase. She had been wrong. The next morning, Laura went to the school unannounced. Her hands shook as she walked into the office. The smell of disinfectant and crayons suddenly felt suffocating. She asked to speak with the principal. She asked about the box. The room went silent. After several tense minutes, a staff member admitted that a behavioral containment space had been used as part of a support plan. Laura felt her knees weaken. "A box?" she asked. "You put my child in a box?" They avoided her eyes. She later learned that Ethan had been placed inside the wooden enclosure during emotional outbursts. The door was closed. Sometimes he stayed there for extended periods. What broke her completely was discovering that he had been eating his meals inside that box alone, confused, trapped. "He can't tell me what you did to him," Laura cried later. "That's why you did it. Because he couldn't fight back." Her husband, Mark Bennett, was furious. That same day, he gathered other parents and went to the school. Voices rose, tears fell, questions were asked, but answers were vague and cold. Parents who had trusted the system now felt betrayed. Word spread fast through the community. Some families shared similar concerns. Others were shocked, unable to believe such a thing could happen. The school district released a short statement saying the structure had been removed and misunderstood. But for Laura, removal wasn't enough. Damage had already been done. What hurt most was learning that the box was never mentioned in Ethan's education plan. Laura had never signed anything. No meeting, no warning, no consent, just silence. And silence was something Ethan knew too well. As the story gained attention, questions grew darker. The school sat near a reservation serving many indigenous families. Some community members wondered if discrimination played a role. Laura didn't want to jump to conclusions, but she couldn't ignore the pattern. Vulnerable children, quiet children, children without a voice. Her attorney, Daniel Cross, spoke publicly days later. He called the situation deeply disturbing and a violation of basic human dignity. He promised to take the case to court, not just for Ethan, but to make sure no child would ever be placed in a box again. Investigations began. Local authorities stepped in. School officials were placed on leave. An interim superintendent was assigned. The district tried to regain control, but trust was already broken. Laura couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined Ethan inside that box, pounding on the walls, crying for help that never came. She blamed herself for not knowing sooner, for trusting too easily, but guilt soon turned into determination. She began speaking out. Interviews, community meetings, online posts. She wanted the world to know what happened behind closed classroom doors. She wanted accountability, justice, change. And slowly, people started listening. Parents hugged their children a little tighter. Teachers questioned outdated practices. Schools reviewed policies. A conversation had begun, one that couldn't be silenced. If you're still watching and this story has moved you even a little, take a moment to support the channel by liking this video and subscribing. Your support helps bring stories like this to light. But this is only the beginning, because what Laura uncovered next would reveal even deeper problems inside the system she once trusted. And the fight for Ethan's voice was far from over. Sometimes, the strongest voices come from those who cannot speak at all. And sometimes it takes one brave parent to open a door the world refused to look behind. The days after the story went public felt unreal for Laura Bennett. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart jumped. Messages poured in from strangers, parents, teachers, even former students of the district. Some shared words of support. Others shared stories that sounded terrifyingly familiar. One message came from a mother who said her child used to come home with bruises but could never explain why. Another said her son, also on the autism spectrum, suddenly developed a fear of school bathrooms and small rooms. Laura realized Ethan's experience might not have been an isolated incident. That thought haunted her. At night, Laura would sit beside Ethan's bed, watching him sleep. Sometimes he would twitch or whimper softly, trapped in dreams she couldn't reach. She wondered what memories his mind was replaying. A dark wooden space? A closed door? Voices outside that never answered him? She promised herself one thing. No matter how long it took, she would make sure no child ever experienced that again. As legal preparations moved forward, Daniel Cross and his team began collecting evidence. Former staff members, speaking anonymously, described an environment where convenience mattered more than compassion. One teacher admitted the box was used because it was effective and kept things quiet. Quiet. That word made Laura's blood boil. Ethan wasn't quiet because he was calm. He was quiet because he was scared. During one meeting, Laura was shown documents she had never seen before. Notes describing Ethan as difficult, unmanageable, and prone to disruption. Not once did they describe him as kind, curious, or gentle, the way she knew her son to be. It felt like they were talking about a problem, not a child. The school district attempted damage control. A carefully worded statement was released, claiming the practice was misunderstood and not meant to harm. They emphasized safety, structure, policy. But Laura had one question no one could answer. If it was so safe, she asked, why was I never told? Silence followed. Community meetings grew heated. Parents demanded transparency. Some school board members avoided eye contact. Others shifted blame. Tension filled the room like thick smoke. Mark stood beside Laura, his fists clenched, his jaw tight. He had always believed in staying calm, trusting the system. Now that trust was gone. One evening, Laura decided to recreate Ethan's day as best as she could. She followed his school schedule. Breakfast, lessons, lunch, breaks. Then she timed how long he was allegedly placed inside the box during outbursts. 10 minutes felt long. 20 minutes felt unbearable. She stopped at 40. Sitting alone in her kitchen, she broke down completely. "How did he survive that?" she whispered. Ethan had begun therapy with a new specialist. Slowly, through drawings and gestures, patterns emerged. He would draw squares, dark shapes, lines that closed in. When the therapist gently asked about school, Ethan covered his ears and rocked back and forth. That was all Laura needed to know. The case attracted national attention. Advocacy groups for children with disabilities spoke out. Experts condemned the use of confinement spaces. Some called it outdated. Others called it abuse. The pressure mounted. Eventually, the district announced sweeping changes. New policies, mandatory training, oversight committees. The box, they said, was gone for good. But Laura knew removal didn't erase trauma. During a quiet afternoon, Laura took Ethan to a park. He ran freely, laughing in his own way, spinning under the open sky. No walls, no doors, no box. She watched him and felt a mix of joy and grief. Joy for the moment, grief for what he had endured. She knelt and hugged him tightly. "I'm here," she whispered. "I always will be." The lawsuit moved forward. Dates were set, testimonies prepared. Laura was nervous, but she was ready. She wasn't just fighting for Ethan anymore. She was fighting for every child whose voice had been ignored. In an interview, Laura said something that stayed with many people. Children don't need to be controlled. They need to be understood. The courtroom battle would take time. Months, maybe years. But something had already changed. Awareness had spread. Conversations had begun. Parents were asking questions. Schools were being watched. And Ethan? Ethan began to smile more. Not because the past was gone, but because the future felt safer. In the end, this story isn't just about a box. It's about what happens when power meets silence. And what happens when a mother refuses to stay quiet. The lesson is simple, but powerful. Never ignore a child who cannot speak, because their pain is still real. And never underestimate the strength of love when it decides to stand up and fight. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends.